Theater, by its very nature, is a collaborative art form. Some may argue that it is the most collaborative of all art forms, but that's a conversation for another day. However, when two of East Tennessee's cultural powerhouses join forces, well, the results are unparalleled magic. Hi, my name is Tom Cervone, and I'm the managing director here at the Clarence Brown Theater on this beautiful campus of the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee, on the native lands of the Uchee, Muskogee Creek, and Cherokee nations. In this final part of our special salute to my dear friend and colleague and our producing artistic director, Cal MacLean, we're going to take a closer look at what perhaps is the largest undertaking this theater and this stage has ever seen. A collaboration between the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra and the Clarence Brown Theater under the careful, watchful, and visionary direction of Cal MacLean. Peter Shaffer's Amadeus, Cal's first collaboration with the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra under the direction of Maestro Lucas Richman in 2010, was a landmark event for both institutions. It was a singular experience highlighting the magnificence of Mozart's creativity in an all-encompassing fashion, reliving moments of genius as they manifested right in front of us. With designs by legendary artists Ron Keller, Bill Black, and John Horner, Amadeus was a fascinating examination of a soul consumed with envy, theatrically accompanied by some of the most beautiful music the world has ever known.
There were things that came out of that production I could not have anticipated. Besides the fact that it was one of my favorite things that I've ever done in my life. What's better than spending, doing weeks of performances of Mozart and great theater,
Cal had a vision for this whole thing. We showed up on day one and he said, this is the set, this is where we're going. I loved the whole Amadeus process. Cal would paint the big lines, and all I needed to do was do my homework to bring more of myself to the role.
So often the productions of Amadeus were done are done with CD recordings, so just with a recorded soundtrack. But here we had the opportunity with live musicians and live singers to manifest the music. And what that ended up doing was it made the music, it became a visceral experience. Salieri is in his disgust of Mozart, he's also in love with Mozart's music, and he talks about and then the oboe comes in, and there's the oboe. It's like it's right there, and the audience can see it, and everybody. It was manifested right there in real time.
Just to be sitting inside this play and actually hear and then also feel the vibrations of the music, it was a dream. I remember our last dress rehearsal, I was floating. Like it was like a roller coaster that I was riding, and I wasn't working at all. And I had never experienced that.
His worldview of the play and the way that we expanded the world of the play with the symphony, with the live orchestra on stage, with the contemporary singers, and the mix of a world in which Mozart was living, and maybe a vision of the world many years later, and what happens to Mozart's music was thrilling and interesting, and a really different way to think about the play than I had ever experienced in the other 3 productions that I worked on.
2012's collaboration, Stephen Sondheim's masterpiece, Sweeney Todd, plunged us into Victorian London and deep into the darker side of the human psyche. With revelatory performances by Jeff Austin as the eponymous demon barber of Fleet Street, and accomplished alumna Dale Dickey as Mrs. Lovett, the eminently practical pie shop owner, and featuring a gravity-defying scenic design by Kevin Depinet that placed the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra at the very heart of the stage. This collaboration was one of the greatest successes the Clarence Brown Theater has ever produced, with audiences absolutely clamoring to attend the tale of Sweeney Todd.
Working with Cal and Sweeney Todd was so exciting. I remember the energy that we had the first day when the cast came together and we were singing and reading the script for the first time. Cal's energy was palpable. He was so excited to be in the room. And that energy kept us really motivated and focused on creating the show.
Cal, he's a workhorse. He's relentless. He's there every minute until it is so fine-tuned. He knows exactly what it needs to be. There was a day in rehearsal, I think it was the opening of the second act, God, That's Good. And I'm going up and down the steps, and Cal at one point goes, okay, now Dale, now you're going to go up the steps, and then you're going to cross way over the platform to that side, and then you're going to do this over there, and then you're going to come back, and you're going to come down the steps, all while not missing a beat or falling on your face. And I literally thought, I cannot do that. And he knew I could do it. It just was I just had to risk doing it and push myself, which is what I've always appreciated about him. He pushes you to be your best.
Sweeney Todd was my last show at the Clarence Brown Theater as a graduate student. He was very trusting and encouraging, even though I was still a graduate student. And he encouraged me to explore my design vision, and I'm very grateful. And I'm very happy that I got to work with him during my time at Clarence Brown Theater.
My favorite show of all time. It was so important to me to work on that show, and it was just such a wonderful time working with Cal as a collaborator on that. And it's astounding what he was able to pull off with all of those varied resources. It was one of my favorite experiences on stage. Remains a very special moment for me. I still have sense memories of what that felt like to walk on stage and to play Toby and to work with that cast and the KSO. It was a magical experience that I will always carry with me.
In what may have been the most monumental production to ever grace the main stage, Leonard Bernstein's Candide once again saw the Clarence Brown collaborate with the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra, this time under the musical direction of Aram Demirjian. Cal's unique vision for this sweeping epic was supported by world-class designers Michael Ganio, Bill Black, and Tony Award-winning lighting designer Jennifer Tipton, featuring a stellar cast of guest artists, company members, graduate and undergraduate students. Bernstein's brilliant and beautiful score deepened Voltaire's classic satire and brought audiences face to face with the best of all possible worlds.
We came at Candide in a similar way, had similar attitudes about the piece, similar love and slight reverence for Leonard Bernstein as a musician, but also just as a historical cultural figure. And we learned a lot from each other. At least I learned a lot from Cal. And one of the things that I really appreciated was just in terms of our collaborative relationship, the primacy of the music that was present, in all of his directorial decisions and in all of the interactions we had.
I asked to work on that production early on because I knew it was going to be this enormous thing. and I really wanted to be a part of it. And Cal's vision going in was crystal clear. And between he and Aram, they had just such a clear vision of how we were going and where we were going. And it was really such a pleasure to tie those two worlds together.
It felt like the music and the drama were really on an even playing field, and that he had a true fluency in both aspects of the drama and dialogue and the theater of it all and the music of it all.
I think that working with him on Candide as a director, he was able to, and I think it makes for a good director, to combine his vision of the piece in his mind with the actualities that come to life during a production, where some technical aspect or some physical aspect has to change the way you look at something. And I think that he worked really well with the design team to make that set such a living thing with the orchestra playing on it.
I think probably the best work that I have done in the past 15 years was Candide. And I owe that entirely to Cal's vision for the play. And in Candide, we began essentially in the 18th century, but we moved swiftly on through the course of the play, so that at the end of the play, we were in modern times. And it was Cal's notion that at the end of the play, we needed to be in modern times that sort of drove the whole plan for how the costume design would function through the play, and how we could manage a production of the enormous size of Candide in a way that would be interesting, would serve the production artistically, and would be possible to produce.
Another thing that I thought was just amazing was Candide. I'm going to be honest, it's not a piece that I especially love. But when I saw the production that we did with the KSO, I was just floored, and it might be the best thing I ever see here. I really thought something was there that production drew out that I was unable to access through reading, through considering, through thinking on my own. And I really think that's what theater at its best can achieve.
A little known fact about the collaborations with the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra. A dear friend and the executive director of the symphony, Rachel Ford, and I were having lunch one day, and we had an idea. We thought it would be really interesting to bring Maestro Lucas Richman and producing artistic director Cal MacLean to a meeting to talk about, well, collaborations.
So we all sat down in the KSO conference room, actually, and the two of them, great artistic minds, had a really exhilarating kind of conversation, really, and they threw out all kinds of ideas of possible productions that the two organizations could do together. And as we look back now, many years later, it's really interesting to see that eventually all three of the performances that we wound up doing, all three of those collaborations were initially suggested in that first meeting.
His most memorable work will probably always be Amadeus and Candide, where we partnered with the symphony. And I think those are the works he loved also. And he brought to our community something that we hadn't had before, which was very special. I like the way he thinks big and really took on big projects.
I think Cal's lasting legacy would be the collaborations with the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra. I think that was genius to bring in live music and professional live music in a way that supports both. And I have to say, being able to collaborate with different artists, giving them all space to do their best work is something that it will be talked about in the future.
I always had the impression that he listens to whoever was talking to him, either students or faculty members. And I really appreciated that I felt being heard, and I think that is a very important quality for anyone who takes a leadership role.
Cal had a passion, and it was always evident that what he was working on, whichever production it was the ultimate passion right then. And he was going to stretch whatever anybody could do, whether it was on stage, whether it was those of us working behind the scenes. He was going to question it. He was going to push us. He was going to break those boundaries. He was going to make us get beyond "we've never done it that way" kind of statements. There is so much to be said for Cal's ability to make everyone feel at home in what was essentially his creative space, and it made the partnership even that much more special for all of us.
I think when we look back on Cal's tenure at Clarence Brown and at UT, I think that we're going to think of two things. I think we're going to think about his keen sense of community, of building a community surrounding the theater, but also of the theater's presence in a broader community of UT. And I think also a spirit of ambition and a spirit of scope and a spirit of aiming higher.
I think Cal brought Knoxville back to the theater. I think that we were both commercially viable and artistically extravagant in those 15 years. We successfully created art that was also commercially successful and brought people back to the theater, so that when we did things that were more challenging, people were willing to give them a chance, and a lot of people found things in the theater that they might not have experienced because we got them back there to start with. I think Cal's vision of a theater incorporates the community that the theater lives in, and I think he understands more than many people how important it is for the community to own the theater and to feel that the theater is speaking to them, both celebrating their joys, but also inviting them to be challenged in the right kind of way.
He's gotten the community more involved. I think he's been involved in the community, and taking the Clarence Brown to the people is what we need to do, because after all, acting is for audiences. And I think that he has listened greatly to not only the people in the department, but also the community, the people on the board, and tried to balance everything that's going on at a university. And that was a great strength for him.
I hope that people remember him for his intensity, that he wanted to get it right. He wanted to do it to the utmost of artistic standards, that he held everyone to those high standards. He knew what he wanted, and he showed it, and he made everybody else live up to it too. And so I really hope that intensity is what we all remember, and that it made us all better.
That idea of we're neither pure nor wise nor good, we'll do the best we know, we'll build our house and chop our wood and make our garden grow, was really what was the driving spirit behind every other directorial decision that I feel like Cal made.
Cal, we couldn't be more proud to have had such a collaborator leading this theater for the last 15 years. From playwrights to maestros to students, Cal has a sense of collaboration that is unparalleled.